President Obama is in the capital city of Laos tonight. He is resting after his last major Asian-Pacific summit failed to produce the kind of breakthrough legacy moment that he had hoped for. Correspondent Kevin Korik reports tonight from Laos.
The complicated challenges of the 21st century cannot be met without coordinated and collective action.
Sounding increasingly like a man with just a few months left on the job, President Obama used his 10th and final summation at the G20 summit to reflect on nearly 8 years of addressing global challenges on the world stage. But what began in 2009 with the desperate cooperative effort to contain the world financial crisis, by 2016 had given way to a host of pressing diplomatic fissures, from differences over maritime and cybersecurity to conflicting strategies in the fight against ISIS and the bloody civil war in Syria, which many here fear has devolved into a de facto proxy war between the U.S. and Russia, the latter of which was the subject of an intense 90-minute meeting between Mr. Obama and Russian President Vladimir Putin on the sidelines here at the summit. The gathering was supposed to induce a blunt exchange about the Kremlin's incursion into Ukraine, sanctions against Moscow, and a pathway forward in Syria, a conversation that took on a new sense of urgency in the wake of the day's deadly attacks on Tartus that killed more than 30 people. Though it was abundantly clear from the president's readout afterwards, he failed to persuade Putin to do much of anything.
Given the gaps of trust that exist, that's a tough negotiation, and we haven't yet closed the gaps in a way where we think it would actually work.
Perhaps even more troubling was the president's inability to fully smooth over tensions with Turkey, a critical NATO ally, but recently at odds with Washington for ramping up its fight against U.S.-backed Kurdish forces in Syria, and its insistence that the U.S. hand over a Turkish cleric that Ankara has blamed for this summer's failed coup attempt. This, as Washington officials privately lamented the vexing variety of diplomatic and strategic masks worn by the Chinese, with Beijing, on the one hand, playing the part of good global citizen with its cooperation on climate change, while simultaneously fraying nerves in the region because of its aggressive, unlawful territorial grab in the South China Sea. Doug, wet and warm weather greeted the president as he made his way here to Laos. Not only the first sitting U.S. president to come here to the country, but also the first to directly address the people of Laos. That will happen, and he'll talk not just about the need for improved economic ties, but also about unexploded ordnance, which has been a real problem and a vestige of the Vietnam War. It's been happening all over the country. He'll talk about that during his time here at ASEAN as well. Doug?
Kevin Korik traveling with the president in Laos tonight. Thank you, Kevin. North Korea made a splash of its own during the Asian summit. The communist regime fired 3 more missiles into the ocean near Japan in its latest display of petulance. Correspondent Benjamin Hall has that story.
Young dictator Kim Jong-un is at it again. Today, the North Korean leader successfully test-fired 3 medium-range Rodong ballistic missiles, sending them 620 miles towards Japan, where they landed less than 200 miles off the coast. About 660 miles in the other direction, President Obama was meeting world leaders at the G20 summit in Hangzhou, China, meaning the summit could have been within range. The rogue country has now carried out 10 such tests this year alone and are in violation of countless UN Security Council resolutions that ban all ballistic-related experiments in the country. At a press conference today, the Japanese Prime Minister responded.
It is an intolerable and reckless act of jeopardizing the peace and stability of the region. It is strongly condemned and is unforgivable.
North Korea's missile program has shown vast signs of improvement this year. Just 2 weeks ago, they again successfully launched a second missile from a submarine, which flew over 300 miles, the longest distance they've achieved with such a weapon. Submarine launchers are far harder to detect and mean they can be launched far closer to their targets. Despite all this, China, long said to be the only country with influence over the North, are still standing by the country, while urging a peaceful resolution.
China's stance on the relevant issue is consistent and clear. We hope all relevant parties can avoid taking actions that may escalate tensions and can make joint efforts to maintain peace and stability on the peninsula.
The UN Security Council will discuss these latest violations in a closed-door meeting on Tuesday morning, as requested by the US and Japan. Only then will we know what action, if any, they'll take. Doug?
Benjamin Hall in London tonight. Thank you, Benjamin.